We're making an easy and delicious gluten-free French bread that doesn't require any yeast or rising. It's full of flavor and protein with oat and almond flour and Greek yogurt. Hello, my name is Nicole Bonilla, and if you love healthier recipes to our favorite foods, then you are in the right place. To make this really easy bread, we're going to start with cottage cheese. Now you're probably wondering what's going to happen to that curdled texture. Well, we're going to blend it smooth before we put it into our bread dough. You can use any upright blender or food processor. I'm going to use the chopper cup with my immersion blender. So I'm just adding 1 cup of cottage cheese, and you can use small curd or large curd or whatever your preference. Now you're welcome to jot down these ingredients as we go along, or you can click on the link that's in the video description below, and that will take you to the full recipe with all the details, including ingredients and substitutions, nutrition facts, and frequently asked questions. Then I'm just going to pop on the lid and then blend it on high until we no longer have the curdled texture. Well, that looks perfect. Now I'll crack in 1 egg, and then I'll blend this just until it's combined. And then we can set this aside for just a minute. Now in our mixing bowl, we're going to add our dry ingredients. And we're going to start with 1 1/4 cups of oat flour. And you can use store-bought or just grind your own from some old-fashioned oats or quick oats. And then for even more flavor, we're going to add 1/2 cup of almond flour. Now I do include on the recipe page on my website some additional flour options and their measurements, and it's in the ingredients and substitutions section. Now this is optional, but I'm going to add 1/4 cup of some Parmesan cheese, and that's going to make it even softer and more flavorful. Next I'll add 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we'll just mix this together till well blended. Now you could use a blender to combine these, but I think it's just as easy using a spatula. So I'll just add our mixed cottage cheese and egg, and then we're just going to mix this together with our spatula. And I find it's really easy to just kind of like spin my bowl and then mash the flour into the wet mixture. And it helps to use a nice stiff silicone spatula for this, because then you can scrape down the sides of your bowl easily. And I'm just going to keep mashing until I get all the flour picked up off the bottom of the bowl. Now this dough is going to be a lot different than a traditional bread dough, and you'll know it's the right consistency when it's just sticky enough that it barely sticks to your fingers as you touch it. So if it's dry and not sticking to your fingers, then you'll want to add a little bit more cottage cheese to it. Or if it's still really sticky, then you can add just a little bit more flour. And I did include all these measurements in grams on the recipe card so that you can be very precise. Now to bake the bread, I've just taken a piece of parchment paper and lined my cookie sheet with it. Now because this dough is very sticky, we're going to need to use some oil to handle it, because we don't want to add any more flour, which would dry out the dough. So I'm just going to pour some light olive oil into my hands, rub that together, and then I'm just going to scoop out all of the dough. And then I'm going to scrape off my spatula to make sure I don't miss any. And then I'm just going to roll this together in my hands and smooth it into one big log. Now, if you could use more healthy inspiration on a regular basis, I invite you to join my email list. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, and that is the best way for us to stay connected. So once we've kind of smoothed down the dough, we can go ahead and set it onto our pan. And then I'm just going to add a little more oil to my hands. And then we just want to gently elongate it till it's about 9 or 10 inches long. So I'm just smoothing it down and then making it an even width throughout the length. Now we can flatten the top just a tad. Now this is a very different technique for shaping a loaf, and I know it might feel a little bit strange, but I promise it turns out. And then to give it a nice crust, I've just taken 1 egg white and a pastry brush, and then I'm just going to brush the egg white all over the top and sides of the loaf. And it does not have to be super thick. And then this is optional, but to make it even more bread-like, I'm going to sprinkle the top with a little bit of sesame seeds. But depending on how you're going to use this bread, you could also use everything bagel seasoning. Now this is ready to go into a 350-degree oven for anywhere between 28 and 32 minutes, or until it has a nice golden brown color all over the top of the loaf. Well, here's our loaf after it has baked and has cooled completely for several hours. Now this is really important with this bread. Because it is so soft on the inside, you'll need it to cool completely before you slice it. Because if you slice it right out of the oven or while it's warm, the inside could kind of squish together on you. But if you allow it to cool, it will be the perfect texture. And then it's ready to slice up and enjoy however you like. And one of my favorite ways is with a little bit of whipped cream cheese on top. That tastes so good. As soon as you bite in, you just get this rich, earthy, bready flavor that comes from that oat flour as well as the almond flour. And I would never detect there was cottage cheese, except that it has this really delicious and kind of subtle tang to it. Now, of course, this isn't going to taste like a bread with yeast and gluten, but it is a fantastic alternative that we were able to make in about 40 minutes. Well, thank you so much for joining me today in my kitchen, and I've included the full link to this recipe in the video description below, and that will take you to my website, gentletummy.com. And I also invite you to like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I cannot wait to have you join me again in my kitchen.